Right now, about 2% of your DNA does not belong to your species. It came from a human that no longer exists, a species we lived alongside, competed with, and eventually replaced. And buried inside that DNA is a record of exactly what happened between us. Scientists have only recently learned how to read it. What it says is not what anyone expected. For almost all of human history, we were not alone on this planet, not in the way we are now, the last surviving human species, spread across every continent, 8 billion strong with no competitors and no equals. For hundreds of thousands of years, there were others. Not apes, not distant evolutionary footnotes, actual humans with large brains, complex social lives, stone tools, fire, and in at least one case, cave art older than anything modern humans ever made. They buried their dead. They cared for the sick and injured. At least one species made jewelry and carved bone into musical instruments. And then, one by one, they all disappeared. The last of them vanished roughly 40,000 years ago, right around the time modern humans finished spreading across the globe. That timing is not a coincidence, and scientists have spent decades trying to figure out exactly what it means. Let's start with the ones most people think they know: Neanderthals. For most of modern history, the Neanderthal has been a punchline. The word itself became shorthand for stupid, primitive, brutish. Cartoons gave them clubs and blank stares. Museums posed them hunched and heavy-browed. The story we told ourselves for over a century was clean and comfortable. We were smarter. They were not, and so they faded out while we moved in and thrived. That story is wrong, almost completely. Neanderthals lived across Europe and Western Asia for roughly 400,000 years. 400,000 years. To put that number in some kind of human scale, modern humans have been the dominant species on Earth for less than 100,000 years. Neanderthals survived 2 separate ice ages. They hunted woolly mammoths and cave bears across frozen tundra. They adapted to environments ranging from Mediterranean coastlines to the edges of the Arctic Circle, building fires, making tools, and raising children through conditions that would kill most people alive today. Their brains were not smaller than ours. In several skull measurements, Neanderthal brain capacity was actually larger than the modern human average. A 2013 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found evidence that Neanderthals were deliberately burying their dead at least 50,000 years ago, long before modern humans arrived in Europe. At a site called Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, researchers found a Neanderthal skeleton surrounded by dense clusters of pollen from multiple plant species. The original interpretation was that flowers had been placed deliberately on the grave. Someone had mourned this person. The flower burial interpretation has been contested since, with some researchers suggesting the pollen arrived through natural means. But what is not contested is this: Neanderthals were returning to specific sites repeatedly to place their dead in deliberate arrangements. That is not animal behavior. That is a species grappling with the meaning of death. At a cave in southeastern Spain called Cueva de los Aviones, researchers found pierced shells and lumps of red and yellow pigment dated to at least 115,000 years ago. That date is critical. Modern humans did not reach that part of Europe until tens of thousands of years later. The only humans in Spain at that time were Neanderthals. They were coloring things. They were piercing shells to wear them. At another site, archaeologists found a necklace made from the talons of a white-tailed eagle. A Neanderthal had hunted one of the most dangerous birds in Europe, carefully removed its talons while preserving their structure, and assembled them into something worn against the body. Not for food, for meaning, for identity, for the same reasons you put on jewelry this morning. And this is where the question changes, because a species that buries its dead, wears jewelry, and decorates its body with the bones of eagles and the shells of sea creatures they carried miles inland because they found them beautiful, is not a species that failed. It is a species that was ended. And the question shifts from why did they disappear to something much more uncomfortable. What exactly did we do to them? But Neanderthals were not the only ones, not even close. In 2008, archaeologists excavating a cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia found a finger bone, small, nondescript, easy to overlook. When scientists extracted DNA from it and ran a full genomic sequence, what came back didn't match Neanderthals and didn't match modern humans. The genome was distinct, an entirely separate branch of humanity that no one had ever identified from bones or tools or cave paintings. They named them Denisovans, after Denisova cave where the bone was found. To this day, the entire known physical record of the Denisovan species consists of a finger bone, a few teeth, and a partial jaw found in Tibet at an altitude of over 10,000 feet. We have almost nothing, but their DNA told a complete story. Denisovans had ranged across an enormous territory, from Siberia down through Southeast Asia and likely into the Pacific Islands. They interbred with modern humans at least twice in different regions, and today, Aboriginal Australians and people from Papua New Guinea carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA in their genomes. A species that left almost no bones, no tools anyone has positively identified, no art, no burial sites we can point to with certainty. And yet, millions of people walking the earth today carry their genetic material inside every cell of their bodies. Then there was Homo floresiensis, discovered on the Indonesian island of Flores in 2003. They stood roughly 3.5 feet tall. They had brains approximately the size of a chimpanzee's, and yet the tools found alongside their bones were sophisticated, carefully shaped, requiring planning and skill to produce. They hunted pygmy elephants that shared their island. They survived on Flores as at least 50,000 years ago, possibly as recently as 12,000 years ago. When modern humans arrived in the region, they were gone. In 2019, on another Philippine island called Luzon, researchers identified bones and teeth belonging to yet another previously unknown species, Homo luzonensis. Another human, another island, another disappearance that aligns precisely with our arrival in the region. And in South Africa, deep inside the Rising Star Cave system, cavers in 2013 discovered a chamber that required squeezing through a passage just 7 inches wide to reach. Inside were hundreds of bones belonging to Homo naledi. They had small brains, curved fingers suited for climbing, and feet nearly identical to ours. The bones showed clear signs of deliberate placement. Homo naledi may have been bringing their dead to this chamber intentionally, far from the cave entrance, in complete darkness, in a space that required significant effort to reach. This behavior, depositing the dead in a specific, difficult-to-reach location with apparent intention, was happening tens of thousands of years before we believed any species other than modern humans was capable of symbolic thought. Homo naledi may have survived as recently as 230,000 years ago. Early modern humans were already in southern Africa by then. They may have seen each other. 6 distinct species, possibly more that left no recoverable remains, no bones dense enough to survive, no DNA we have yet found. All of them gone. All of them disappearing in rough alignment with the expansion of one species, ours. The question science has struggled to answer honestly is how much of that was our doing. For decades, the dominant theory was competitive exclusion. Modern humans were cognitively superior, more complex language, denser social networks, more efficient tools, better long-distance trade. The others couldn't compete economically. They didn't starve overnight, they just slowly lost access to the best hunting grounds, the most productive gathering territories, the warmest caves. Their birth rates dropped, their populations fragmented. Over thousands of years, they thinned out and vanished. A slow fade, no violence required, just the invisible pressure of being outcompeted by something slightly better at surviving. It is a clean theory. It is also increasingly difficult to defend. The timelines are the problem. Neanderthals had endured everything the planet could throw at them for 400,000 years. Volcanic winters, glacial maximums, catastrophic ecosystem collapses. They had survived all of it. And then modern humans spread into Europe, and within 5,000 to 10,000 years, a geological eye blink, Neanderthals were gone. Species that had been ecologically stable across enormous territories for hundreds of thousands of years did not slowly decline over gentle millennia. They collapsed, and the collapses map onto human arrival with a consistency that is hard to attribute to coincidence across 6 separate species on multiple continents and islands separated by tens of thousands of years.